In this lecture, we are going to take a look at another type of scan called the xmas scan. Alright, so basically what happens in the xmas scan is that we have the client will send a packet containing three types of flags: the push flag, the fin flag, and the urgent flag over a particular port that it wishes to establish a connection with the server. Now, if the server sends no response, then we can conclude either the port is open or the port is filtered. Alright, so either the port is open or the port is filtered if we didn't get any response. And also, if we send the push and the fin and the urgent flag in a packet over a particular port, and then the response from the server sent a packet that contains a reset flag, actually an acknowledgement and a reset flag, then we can come to the conclusion that that port is closed. However, if the response from the server is an ICMP error type 3, code 123910 or 13, then we have to conclude that that particular port is filtered. In fact, now we have this algorithm that we are going to use to create our xmas scan function. So we have, in the first step, we are going to send a packet that contains the three flags: the fin flag, the push flag, and the urgent flag. And then if the response is a packet that contains acknowledgement and reset flag, then we can return that the port is closed. However, if the response is an ICMP, it's a packet that contains ICMP layer with error type 3, code 123910 or 13, then we can see the port is filtered. However, if there's not any response, then we can conclude either the port is open or filtered. So with this knowledge now, we will go back to our port scanner file and then try to see how we can realize that in a function. So we are going to come over and then define a new function. And then I'm going to name it xmas scan. And as usual, this function will require two parameters. We are going to pass a target as one parameter, which is the IP address that we are going to scan, and then the port that we are going to scan. So now what I'm going to do, I'll go over to the scene scan, also just copy the code and then try to see the modification that we are going to do to it to achieve the the xmas scan. So I'm just copy this and then I'll come over and then I'm going to paste it in my xmas scan function. So I'll paste it here and then we can go ahead and implement the modification to this code. All right, so we go over. As usual, we have these we created a variable source port, and then we invoke we created an we run the run.short, which will generate a small random number that will serve as our source port. And then we now create a IP scan packet and then create a TCP scan packet, and then we combine the two together to have our scan packet, and then we now send that packet using method sr1, and then now we are going to have our response. Now we check the response. If the response is none, if the response is not equivalent to none, that means we actually have a response. Then we are going to check for a layer, escape TCP layer. Now in this time we'll go back to our algorithm and see what do we actually expect. So what we are sending is a packet that contains the three types of flag. Send a fin flag, a push flag, and the urgent flag. So we have to go back and make sure that the packet we are sending actually contain not a fin flag but a combination of these three types of flags. So the fin flag, the push flag, and the urgent flag. So that is the packet that we are sending. And then the response, which go back to the algorithm again. So with the response we are expecting is an acknowledgement and reset flag in a packet. So we go back to the response and then check the response. So if it has layer skp.tcp, now what we are targeting is to actually have a packet that has acknowledgement and reset flag in it. Now if you check our table here, we can see that reset and ack flag has a decimal equivalent of 20, or a hexadecimal equivalent of or x14. So we are going to make use of that to now check if our packet contains a reset and the acknowledgement flag. So we go back to our code, we go back to the code and now check for the existence of the packet. So actually it is we are checking for if the packet has a decimal value of 20, not 18. So we change this to 20. So now if it has 20, then we go back to the algorithm and see what's the next step. Then we just return that the port is closed, so we don't need to send any packet. So I'm actually going to do away with this and then do away with this. So we don't need this. So actually we are just going to return that the port is closed. Okay, so let me go back to the algorithm to make sure that we're implementing. So we are going to return that the port is closed. So we return that the port is closed. So we replace this with closed. Closed, right? Save it. All right, then we'll go back to the algorithm again and check. Now we check if the response contains this layer ICMP, and then in that layer we have if contains a layer ICMP, and then if it contains a field called type, and that type has a value of 3, and also a field with code, and this code either has the value 1, 2, 3, 9, 10 or 13. So that is what we are going to go and check next before we conclude that the fault is filtered. Now we check if scan response.skp.icmp now. So we are not checking for ICMP now. We are checking for we are not checking for TCP. We are checking for ICMP. So ICMP layer, and the type we are checking. We are for the field we are checking for the type field, and then if the type field has the value of 3, so we go back and replace this with 3, and then also if the scan response the skp.icmp, I will just copy this, has a field called code, and then we are checking for if the code has any of these values 1, 2, 3, 9, 10 or 13. So we are going to just create a list and then populate the list with this element. So I'll just go over there and then create a list, and then we are checking for the existence of this element that are in this list. So we'll just come over here, go back, just copy this, copy it, and then go back to the code and then paste it in the list. Okay, so I'll do away with this. So we are checking if the value of the code is in 1, 2, 3, 9, 10 or 13. So this is scan, not can. Okay, scan response skp.icmp.code in 1, 2, 3, 9, 10 or 13. So we are checking for that, and then remember it is if, so we have to put a colon, and then now our response we are going to return filtered. So we are going to return filtered. However, if there is not a response, then either it is open or it is filtered. So I'll just put let me make use of my soft keyboard, then I'll make a shift. I don't have the symbol on the hardware keyboard, so all right. So I have open, shift, all right, filtered. So I'll close, and then so we are going to return open, filtered. All right. So with this now we can go back and then invoke this particular function, run it, and then see whether if there's any error. I know that there's going to be an error, so we are going to correct that error. There's something that I'm supposed to do there, I didn't do it, so I just want to see the error, and then we come back to correct the error. So xms scan. So now we'll go back and then run it against the Windows 10 machine, and then see what we are going to have as our output. So go back to the terminal and then try to run the script. So we are running it against and the though we are not checking for the scan type yet, but to be on the safer side, let's so that just add xms, and then we are scanning over 4080. So let me enter my password. Now we are going to check for it and then see what the response is going to be like. If we are going to have an error, so okay, so closed. All right, it is closed, but I'm expecting an error, so maybe that area of the code wasn't checked, but I'm expecting an error here because actually we need to the response, we need to convert it into integer before checking it against an integer. Okay, so perhaps because our firewall is off. Now let's enable the firewall and then run the script again and then see if there is an error. Then we correct the error. If there's not any error, then our code is okay. So let's go back again and then run the script and then see what the response is going to be like. All right, okay, open filtered, so we couldn't get a response. That means it is open filtered. All right, so all right, so also here I need to be on the server side, we need to convert this into int whatsoever. Here we need to convert it into int, so that because whatsoever the value, so because we are checking it against an integer, so let's convert it to int so that to avoid any issue. Also here we need to convert the value to int. Scan response .kp.icmp.code, and then we are checking it in in a list that contains integer element that are of int data type. So now let me run the code again. Let me run the script again, and then if there is error, we try to rectify the error. Perfect. So that is what we have. We can see that our xms scan script is working perfectly. So in the next lecture, we continue building off on this script.